Okay, start with George. Just a reminder, these are 1-minute answers to each question. And we'll go right into it. Even with the cloud hangover, like I mentioned, SB 5, not knowing what's happened. Let's just assume for a moment that it does stay in place, that collective bargaining changes. How do you think that's going to affect Westchester Township?
I think it's going to have a tremendously positive effect on Westchester Township. And to be clear, I'm very pro-union. To me, that's part of the free market systems. The problem we have in government and in businesses isn't the union. It's government getting involved, passing laws that either hurt or harm the union. It's not the union's fault, it is the government's fault. I believe all economic problems in America today are a direct result of the government, and most of them are a direct result of the law of unintended consequences. What I like best about Senate Bill 5, and I do think it has some warts, is the thing with binding arbitration. Today, as we negotiate with the various unions, if we don't come to an agreement, we go to binding arbitration, where over 90% of the time, the arbitrators side with the union. What this new Senate Bill 5 will do is it gives the responsibility, takes it away from an unelected official, and puts it on an elected official who ultimately is held to be responsible by you, the voters. So this takes the responsibility from an unaccountable arbitrator and puts it in your hands, and that's where it belongs. If you don't like the way we vote, you can unelect us.
Same question to you. SB 5 does stand. How do you think it will affect Westchester Township?
Well, first of all, I'm opposed to SB 5. And I think if you look over the last few months, you see Governor Casey came out saying that it needs to be improved. Our own Republican representatives here, Courtney Combs, came out and said it's bad legislation. So I think it's going down one way or the other. It's going to be voted down here or it's going to be declared unconstitutional. I see what George says, that he thinks it's all coming from Greece, but I think the issue on SB 5 is I think local leaders have to negotiate with the unions. They have to show them some respect, and I think we have to learn to get along. We're all in this together. I don't think any of the firefighters, the police, the teachers union, they want a good community too. We have to learn to work with them. And I think what this law does, which just makes, essentially takes all the rights away from the union. I think the topic of how this arbitration comes about, right now, I think the situation we have now is bad. SB 5 makes it worse. The arbitrator should be allowed to strike a balance, to strike a compromise. The way the law is written right now, you either have to pick one or the other. That's ridiculous. So I think we have to change the existing law that we have as far as binding arbitration, and that's the solution. That and having leaders who stand up and be fiscally responsible.
Great. And Bill, assuming that it stands, how do you think it's going to affect Westchester Township?
Assuming if it stands, it may have some impact on our negotiations. But let me say that I honestly don't think that the role of trustee is going to be decided by our individual positions on SB 5. I wouldn't have a lot of respect for it. If people looked at my opinion of SB 5 and made a decision, I think that we made a mistake. My sense, however, is that it does need some amendment, and I do understand what the more complex problems are with respect to employees and trying to incentivize them. I've managed public organizations that have had 200 people. I've worked closely with the unions. I know what the issue is, and it's very difficult. But I think we have more important local issues that we as trustees should be focused on. I think you know what that is.
Great. This next question is going to go to Tony first. Granted that Westchester has been very successful and fiscally our condition is better than a lot of other places in Ohio, but there's uncertainty and potentially tough economic conditions that are ahead. And certainly the rest of the state and country have been experiencing. Do you think that it was correct for the township to give a raise to township employees? Just talent.
I think the employees or folks should be getting paid what they deserve. That said, okay, I think the employees should get paid what they deserve, what the market will bear, and what their standard wages are. I think that should be the driver as opposed to living in a vacuum. So I think if we look in many positions within government, they say there's no transferable positions in the private sector, but I think we have to be looking at that and see how they compare to the private sector. I think based on that, there are some folks probably within Westchester, there may be some that are overpaid, there's some that are underpaid. I don't know about the specifics about that, but I think if the folks that are running the township right now made that decision, I would stand by that. They're probably closer to the actual positions than I am. So, yes, I would probably support the raises from what I know right now.
And Bill, how do you feel about the raises? Were they appropriate?
I personally found the raises a little difficult to digest. I think we are a wonderful community, and I think we're doing pretty good economically. A cash balance, that including police and fire, I'm not sure is really reflective of how successful we are. But I think it probably was a mistake. The economy is in terrible shape, and I think we need to be finding ways to save money for our senior citizens. Those people are trying to put food on the table. Those people are trying to afford their medication. I think our focus should be on saving tax dollars for our citizens right now.
George, where do you stand on the issue of the recent raises?
We're looking at a perfect storm of financial devastation coming to Westchester, as it is with all governments. We're losing much of our local government fund. We're losing part of our inheritance tax. And for government to continue to grow at a time when revenues are going to decrease and the private sector is in decline, it is unsustainable. Unsustainable. And what's going on right now, government continues to do this. And about 4 years ago to 6 years ago, depending on what sector you're in, the private sector started doing this. And if we don't rectify that, we are in for a perfect storm similar to what's being experienced in Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Don't think we are immune from it. We have to shrink the total size of government so that we can shrink the burden on businesses so that they can create more jobs because they're able to make more profits because they're paying less money to the government. If we don't turn this tide, we're in bad shape. Many people in the private sector have not had a raise, in some cases for 5 years, and some of them are making significantly less money.
Amen.
Great. Next question, we'll start with Tony this time. Given that the core competencies are basically infrastructure and safety, there is some discretionary spending within our township budget. So what are your plans to improve the township?
There is some discretionary fund in the township budget, but as we've all seen for the past several years, we hardly have money to pave our roads, maintain our roads. 3 years we didn't pave any residential streets. So if we're talking in terms of improvements to the residential areas, we obviously don't have the money to do that. We do have the money to continue to make improvements to our commercial areas next to the TIDs, but we don't have the money in the residential areas. So I think the important thing is to recognize we need to reduce our taxes. We need to collect the funds that leave each day in order to eliminate the police and fire levies. And then we can talk about whether we want to dig into our pockets and spend money on other things, or whether we need that to pay our bills.
George, do you have plans to improve the township?
Yeah, actually, there's quite a bit of discretionary spending that's going on in Westchester. If Westchester did nothing but focus on their core competencies, and I define the core competencies of public safety, police and fire, and infrastructure, roads, and more important than roads, stormwater management, we don't need any additional revenue for the next 10 to 15 years. Our roads are better maintained than any roads in any other community. And about 3 years ago, we started what is called the Core Infrastructure Fund, where we started taking revenue that used to go for discretionary spending, and we started putting it into a fund for future road improvements. We currently have about $1 billion in that fund, and we're currently going to be using some of the carryover that we have built up in the next 3 years to make sure our roads are maintained and that they continue to be the envy of other communities. Don't give us extra money. We all have ideas how we will spend it on a discretionary basis. It's your money. You keep it. Don't give it to us.
Tony, any plans to improve the township?
Yeah, I think that the big issue that I can help on would be with infrastructure. I think just cutting the expenditures on infrastructure over the short term might reap short-term profits or short-term gains. But over the long haul, we have to have a systematic program in place that we're inspecting these roads and maintaining them. And culverts or pipes underneath the road, it's a lot cheaper to maintain or upgrade a culvert or a pipe or a head wall and clean those up than it is to repair a damaged road if a culvert or a pipe fail. So I think as an engineer, I think I understand this. We do have a program in place, but I think I can drive that a little bit harder. That's what I've done for the last 30 years as far as engineering and managing these types of projects. So we've got to look not just at the short term, but start looking at the long term and build a long-term maintenance and inspection program that will better serve our community, and over the long haul, that will save money.